Help me reach 5,000 subscribers. Support the video with a like and leave your thoughts in the comments. It happened at Ruth's Chris Steakhouse. The place smelled of money and medium-rare success. She was across the table, smiling too brightly, her phone lighting up every few minutes with messages from her client. I didn't say a word. I just watched her trace the rim of her wine glass with that same rehearsed grace she used during open houses. When the waiter brought the check, she leaned back, crossed her legs, and said it like it was casual. "If you want intimacy, buy me something first." The table went silent. The music, the chatter, even the clinking of glasses around us, everything blurred out. I just looked at her. She thought she was being clever, playful even. But in that single sentence, she priced herself. And I understood something. You can't outbid emptiness. I didn't argue. I paid, left a tip big enough to erase suspicion, and walked her to her car. She talked about a new condo listing, a client named Matthew, the one who drove the silver Mercedes, and how connections like that keep her relevant. I nodded. Relevance. That was the word she used to cover up hunger. Back home, the house looked perfect. Zara home candles flickered on the table, matching throw pillows arranged with magazine precision. It was her stage, every detail curated for guests, for clients, for her own reflection. But not for us. I took my keys, the ones for the Ford Ranger, and sat in the driveway. The truck smelled like dust and old leather, honest smells. I didn't drive anywhere that night. I just sat there, realizing I'd been paying for things that never belonged to me. When she came out later, she asked if I was okay. I said yeah. But something had already shifted. She wanted gifts before touch. I decided to gift her something priceless. Silence. That night, while she slept surrounded by perfect decor, I logged into Chase Bank and stared at the accounts we shared. The numbers were still hers to spend. For now. A week later, she called it networking. Dinner with that same client, the developer with the Mercedes. She wore a black dress I hadn't seen before, the kind that wasn't bought for me. She left the house smelling like ambition, her heels echoing down the hallway like a countdown. I didn't ask where she was going. I'd already stopped keeping track of destinations that didn't include me. At work, the noise of the construction site drowned out everything else. The hammering, the hum of machines, the smell of fresh lumber, real things. No pretending. At lunch, one of the younger guys scrolled through his phone and said he'd seen my wife tagged in a post. A fancy restaurant, her hand resting near that same silver watch from the steakhouse. She captioned it, "Building partnerships." I didn't flinch, just kept chewing. That night, she came home late. Perfume first, then the soft sound of her heels. She said the dinner was productive, that the client might invest in a new set of luxury condos. She sounded proud, like she'd just won a trophy. I said nothing. I didn't want to interrupt her celebration. But inside, something solid was forming, the quiet decision that men like me make when words stop working. The next morning, I stopped by Home Depot before sunrise. The guy at the counter asked if I was starting a new project. I just nodded. He didn't need to know it wasn't a job, it was an exit. I bought tools I didn't even need, but the act itself steadied me. Every screw, every nail, felt like a piece of control coming back. When I got home, she was still asleep. The Zara home candles had burned out, leaving nothing but faint traces of wax and perfume. I looked at her and realized she was never really here. Just a brand, a display. And me? I was just the foundation she decorated until something shinier came along. That morning, I didn't wake her. I packed my plans instead. I started noticing patterns. Her phone always face down, her laughter louder when she texted. She called him Matt from work, as if naming him casually made it harmless. But her eyes told a different story, the kind that doesn't need subtitles. I stopped asking questions. I already knew the answers. One evening, she came home glowing. Said she'd been showing Matt a new property near the lake. He'd given her a bracelet. Nothing serious, just a token of appreciation. I looked at it once. The logo was small, but the meaning wasn't. Louis Vuitton. That was her language now. Every charm and clasp another word for validation. When she went to shower, I sat at the kitchen counter and scrolled through her tablet. It wasn't snooping. It was confirmation. Calendar entries marked client follow-up, with locations that weren't offices. Photos in the cloud, her reflection in restaurant glass, him blurred behind her. I didn't need to see faces, just patterns. The next day, at work, I drew up plans for a project in another city. A quiet place 2 hours away. A foundation strong enough to carry something new. I ran the numbers during my lunch break and sent a few transfers through Chase Bank. Small amounts, just enough to start closing the gaps. Quiet movements. Nothing she'd notice. That night, she mentioned she might take a weekend trip for networking. I just nodded. My silence confused her. She expected a reaction, maybe even a fight. But there's nothing to argue about once you've seen the receipts. When she left the room, I stared at the empty chair across the table. The Zara home decor looked perfect again, too perfect. Like a home stage for someone else to buy. I realized I'd built this house like I built everything else. Solid, functional, dependable. But I was the only real thing in it. By midnight, I'd made my decision. The foundation of us had cracked, and I wasn't patching it this time. I was walking away before the walls collapsed. The morning she left for her work trip, the air in the house felt different. Lighter, cleaner, almost relieved. She kissed me on the cheek out of habit, her phone already buzzing with messages before she reached the door. I didn't stop her. I just watched her walk away, heels clicking on the tiles like punctuation marks to the end of a chapter. When her car disappeared down the street, I opened my laptop and began the quiet dismantling. Chase Bank, joint accounts. Each one a reminder of shared responsibility that no longer existed. I transferred what was mine, closed what was ours. No anger, no hesitation. Just numbers and clarity. Then I packed a small bag. The essentials, nothing sentimental. The rest of my life fit in the back of the truck. Before I left, I walked through the house one last time. Everything was spotless, coordinated, soulless. The Zara home decor she'd spent hours arranging now looked like a showroom for a life we never actually lived. I drove to the new site 2 hours away, where the land was still raw, dirt, concrete, steel, honest materials. I rented a small trailer next to the foundation we'd just poured. It smelled of sawdust and rain, and for the first time in months, I could breathe. That evening, she called. I let it ring once, then answered. Her voice was casual, almost rehearsed, like nothing had changed. She asked if everything was okay at home. I said, "You wanted something expensive." It was me. And then I hung up. Silence followed. Not the kind that fills space awkwardly, but the kind that rewires it. She didn't call again that night. I sat on the steps of the trailer, watching the sunset over the unfinished structure. I didn't feel rage or regret, just a deep, clean stillness. She thought she'd left for luxury. I'd left for peace. And only one of us would find it. Days turned into weeks, and I didn't hear from her. Not a text, not a call. Just silence. The kind that tells you someone's too proud to ask what went wrong. I spent my mornings at the site, pouring concrete, framing walls, building something real. The men there didn't ask questions. They saw the look in my eyes and knew it wasn't about work anymore. It was about rebuilding something she couldn't afford, integrity. One afternoon, a coworker showed me a local news article online. The headline was small, but the photo wasn't. It was her, standing beside that same client, Matt, at a charity event, both smiling for the camera. The caption called him a successful developer expanding his real estate portfolio. She stood next to him like she belonged there. Jewelry flashing, posture perfect, face unreadable. I didn't feel anger, just distance. She'd chosen her world, and now she was living in it. That night, I made a quiet move. I sent a few documents, nothing illegal, just revealing, through an anonymous tip line. The kind of details that show when success is built on sand. Bank transfers, fake contracts, the glossy layers hiding his foundation. I didn't need revenge. I just wanted the truth to breathe. A few days later, news spread through the site that the developer's projects were being reviewed for irregularities. His empire began to shake, not collapse, just enough to expose the cracks. I didn't celebrate. I just kept working, tightening bolts, pouring concrete like nothing happened. At night, I'd sit in the truck, look at the horizon, and think about her. She'd built her world out of borrowed shine. And me? I was done polishing illusions. She wanted a man who could buy her things. Instead, she got silence, and the slow unraveling of everything she'd sold herself for. Word travels fast in small towns. Within a week, everyone in her circle knew the developer's name wasn't shining anymore. Investigations, whispers, investors pulling back. It all moved like quiet fire. She tried to keep her posture, posting smiles, coffee cups, luxury bags. But I could tell from her photos that the glow was dimming. She was trying to convince herself she still mattered. Then one evening, I stopped by a supply store to pick up lumber. Outside, two agents from her real estate office stood talking. They didn't notice me at first. One of them said, "She really thought no one would notice." The other shook her head. She traded her marriage for a client. Now she's got neither. Their words landed harder than I expected, not because they hurt, but because they confirmed what I already knew. Truth doesn't need to scream. It just stands there until everyone sees it. I didn't say a word. I just paid for my materials and drove back to the site. The new house was finally taking shape, wood framing against a fading sunset, windows reflecting light that didn't come from anyone else's approval. It felt right. Solid. That night, my phone buzzed. Her name on the screen. I watched it ring until it stopped. A message followed. "Can we talk?" I didn't open it. Instead, I placed the phone face down on the table, the same way she used to. Silence can be cruel when you're not the one who chose it. For me, it was freedom. For her, it was echo. I went back outside, looked at the half-built walls, and smiled. She'd built her world from facades. I'd built mine from ground up. One collapses under pressure. The other stands through storms. Weeks passed before she showed up at the new site. I saw her car pull up in a cloud of dust, its shine dulled by the road. She stepped out, dressed too perfectly for a construction zone, heels sinking into the dirt. Her voice trembled just enough to betray her calm. She said she'd been trying to reach me, that she didn't understand what happened. I looked at her, really looked, and realized she wasn't talking to me. She was talking to the version of me she remembered. The dependable one. The quiet one. The man who always fixed things. But that man was gone. I told her the house wasn't ready yet. No place for visitors. She forced a smile, said she just wanted to see me, to talk. The wind carried the smell of sawdust and rain between us. For a moment, she looked around at the unfinished walls, the exposed beams, the rough ground. "You really live like this now?" she asked. I said, "It's real." That was all. She looked down, adjusting the same Louis Vuitton bracelet I'd once noticed gleaming under restaurant lights. It didn't shine the same way anymore. Her eyes searched for softness in me, but there wasn't any left to find. I wasn't cruel. I was done. When she finally left, her perfume lingered, mixing awkwardly with the scent of wood and concrete. I stood there for a while, watching her car disappear behind the trees. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was clean. Later that night, I sat on the porch of the trailer with a cup of coffee, staring at the stars. Somewhere out there, she was realizing that silence isn't absence, it's consequence. She'd built her comfort on my stability. And now that I'd withdrawn it, her whole world was wobbling. I didn't need to rebuild us. I was already building something better myself. She started showing up more often after that. At first, it was under excuses. She'd left something at the old house or needed to talk about finances. But I knew what it was really about. Control. She wasn't used to being ignored. The silence was pressing down on her, reshaping everything she thought she understood about me. One evening, she waited by the truck while I was locking up the tools. The sky was turning orange, the kind of light that softens everything except the truth. She said she'd made a mistake, that things got complicated. Her voice carried the same tone she used when talking to clients. Rehearsed, emotional, but empty underneath. I listened quietly. The words slid past me, like wind against concrete. When she paused, waiting for me to fill the space, I didn't. She looked at me, eyes glassy, and whispered that she missed what we had. I told her that what we had was built on respect, and once that cracked, nothing held it together. She tried to step closer, maybe to bridge the distance, but I moved away. I wasn't angry. I was just done being available. After she left, I walked through the site again. The beams, the framing, the wiring, all of it raw but honest. I thought about how much easier it is to build a house than to rebuild trust. At least houses follow blueprints. People don't. Later that night, I saw she'd posted something online. A picture of the lake, captioned, "Sometimes we don't appreciate what's real until it's gone." Dozens of likes, a few sympathy comments. But none of it mattered. I wasn't part of her audience anymore. She wanted to be seen. I'd chosen to disappear. And in that silence, she finally started hearing everything she'd ignored. The unraveling came quietly, the same way storms sneak in at dusk. Her calls turned from confident to uncertain, her tone from polished to desperate. She'd lost listings, clients had backed away, and the developer, Matt, was suddenly out of the picture. I didn't ask why. I already knew. When a structure is built on lies, even gravity stops holding it together. One night, she drove out to the site again. This time, she didn't wear the perfect dress or the polished heels. She looked smaller, like life had finally stripped the shine off her. She said she didn't care about houses, clients, or money anymore. She just wanted to start over. I stood there, hands in my pockets, watching her try to find the right words. They didn't come. There are no words for realizing too late that love doesn't renew like a contract. Behind her, the skeleton of the new house loomed in the moonlight. Beams, raw and unfinished, but strong. I told her I'd already started over, just not in the way she imagined. She started to cry quietly, the kind of tears that come when silence answers louder than shouting. I didn't move closer. I'd already been there once. The man who fixed, forgave, rebuilt. Not anymore. After she left, I walked through the house. The walls were still open, wires exposed, the floor rough. But every inch of it was mine, built with intention, not illusion. I thought about her bracelet, the designer one that used to flash when she laughed. Somewhere out there, it was probably sitting in a drawer, just another thing she'd outgrown. By the time I turned off the lights, I realized she hadn't just lost me. She'd lost the version of herself that I used to believe in. And that loss, unlike mine, couldn't be rebuilt. The final time I saw her was at the old house. She'd asked to meet, said she just needed closure. I agreed, not out of curiosity, but out of finality. When I pulled up, the place looked the same, staged, polished, but hollow. The Zara home candles still burned on the table, the same kind she used to light when she wanted to make things feel perfect. But even the scent felt different now. Manufactured. She stood by the counter, nervous, rehearsed again. She said she'd been thinking that maybe we could rebuild, take things slow. Her voice cracked when she said she missed who I used to be. I let the words hang in the air until they stopped echoing. Then I told her the truth. I wasn't that man anymore. She'd taught me that love without respect is just a transaction waiting to expire. Her eyes filled, but she didn't fight. Maybe she finally understood that silence doesn't always mean absence. Sometimes it means peace. I told her she didn't lose me because she cheated. She lost me when she started negotiating for affection. Before I left, I looked around the house one last time. Everything she'd decorated to look successful now looked staged for someone else's story. I walked out to the driveway, the same spot where my Ford Ranger used to sit. The pavement still held faint marks of its tires, like ghosts of departure. She followed me to the door and whispered that she hoped someday I'd forgive her. I said, I already did. That's why I'm leaving. The air was still. No shouting, no scene, no drama. Just two people standing in the ruins of something they both built wrong. I turned once more before walking away and said the only thing left worth saying. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where I wasn't respected. And then, for the first time in years, the silence felt like home. Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories.